Afternoon here in the old Pueblo. Welcome back inside the Parisi Palace, high above 2919 East Broadway. This is hour number 2 of the Jake Feinberg Show. Coming to you live on Power Talk. Please go to our website, powertalk.live. Download our free app to your smartphone and stream all of our live local shows. And we thank you so much for making us part of your day today. And I am thrilled now to bring in a world-class musician, a performer of melodic improvisation. She's been doing it for a long time. Not easy, but in the year of the woman on the Jake Feinberg Show, it's an honor to welcome Joanne Brackeen. Welcome to the Jake Feinberg Show.
Thank you, Jake.
How are you, friend?
I feel great.
Oh, that's great. It's so nice to
I'm on the inside where outside the real feel is 108 degrees.
The real feel. No, listen, I'm a Long Islander, but I got to tell you, I don't have any sympathy for you because that's par for the course here in Tucson. We cook like that every day.
Well, I know, but yours is a little drier.
A little bit. Well, and you stay cool, and I hope by the end you're really cool after this. I just wanted you to talk a little bit about, if you could, stepping back, just as a woman in the music industry, going back to your days from West Coast Bop, being influenced by the titans of the music, but ultimately where you stand today. Can you talk to younger women about your journey in the music industry?
Well, the first thing, I never thought of it as an industry. I just thought of it as music, and I never paid any attention to the fact that a man or a woman was any different in playing music. Maybe it's because there weren't any women. But I had heard on records when I was a teenager, they had a record that had Marion McPartland on it. I think it had Mary Lou Williams. There's another lady named Barbara. I can't think what her last name is.
Barbara Carroll?
Anyway,
Barbara Carroll?
Yeah, Barbara Carroll.
Yep.
Right? And it was mixed with men. And so, of course, I was from a kind of a small city, so I never stopped to think that there weren't both men and women doing it. And I really...
Yeah. Well, no, I mean, do you feel... have you ever... No, it's fine. I mean, yeah. I guess because I've talked this year alone, Lanny Hall, Herb Albert's wife, Rita Coolidge. I've interviewed a bunch of women I've dedicated this year to the Year of the Woman. Can you talk to maybe less secure women about what are the qualities of leadership and that you need in order to succeed?
You know, when I already had succeeded before I ever thought. Let me just put it that way.
Explain what you mean by that.
I never thought. I never thought about succeeding or not succeeding. All I know is I really loved music, and I loved playing it, and I was really picky about the kind of music that I did like, and therefore I like to be surrounded by people that like the same type of thing that I did so that we could play. I never thought about a career. I never thought about anything. I'm sorry to say.
No,
maybe it's just because I'm so far back in history that women didn't think that way. So I didn't. I just wanted to play music, and I wanted to play with the people that would hear the same types of and appreciate and like the same types of things that I did.
I would like to ask you about then, because of your comfortability within just playing music that felt good, if you could talk about your first professional gig and the kinds of places that you would play, and ultimately the first time on the bandstand when you left your physical body.
Let's see. The first time that I played and got paid for it, I think I was 11.
11.
Yeah, and 11 or 12, might have been 12, junior high school the first year, and we had a dance band, and I think you had to be a senior to be in that band, but the lady who was in it was a friend of my sister's, and so she knew I could play, and somehow I got the job. So we would play at the dances for the kids, high school dances, and we got paid. So that was the first thing I did. The second thing I remember doing, I don't know if you ever heard of this girl, woman, who was called, let's see, she was on the Lawrence Welk show. She was called Joanne Castle.
Yes.
But her real name was Joanne Ziering, and she was a really good friend of mine. And she played accordion and sang. And we were good friends, so we were always together. And so we did some shows, just her and myself. She would play accordion and sing. I would play piano and do solos.
Where are the analog cassettes of that stuff? I need that immediately. Unbelievable.
I'm sorry?
I was just hoping that someone recorded that stuff with an analog cassette. Are there any recordings?
I don't think they did. But we had some recordings, but I have no idea what happened.
Right. But you were just having a ball. I mean, basically you were having a ball the entire time.
Absolutely. Now, she didn't play jazz as much as I did. I liked at that time, because it was such a small city, I never heard any more than what I heard on those recordings. And I did like Frankie Carl. And so we have to kind of relate that, but it sounded like it came a lot from Fats Waller. So that was the first type of playing that I heard. So then by the time that was 12. By the time I was 14, I grew up tall, and so I was 6 feet tall. And therefore, I started getting calls for jobs with the people who had to be 21 and over. So I did these jobs. I guess they had to pick me up for a couple of years, and then you could get your driver's license when you're 16. So after that, I was always working. Then we moved down into the Los Angeles area, which was much bigger.
What town were you originally living in?
Ventura.
But I mean, that's the one you're referring to that was so small?
Yeah.
Okay, so
at that time, it was 17. It was 17,000 people. Now it's way over 100,000.
No, it's a big. We're talking to a titan of melodic improvisation here on the Jake Feinberg Show. Can you talk about this idea of like your first gig? Did you play at the Dragonwick, for instance, with Charles Lloyd? I remember talking to Jim Keltner.
You're talking about L.A.
Absolutely, because
I played at the club Intimate. There's a club on Washington Street. Really, I can't think of the name of it right now. The It Club or something.
The It Club? Oh, absolutely. No, they used, but I guess. Go ahead.
There's another club that was down on Manchester, just on 85th and Manchester, the Zebra Lounge. The club Intimate. We played all over. There were a lot of places. And the people that were surrounding me that you probably heard of is like Charles Lloyd and Bobby Hutcherson. There was another place where I did Sunday mornings, and Art Farmer used to be working there a lot. These are just some of the names you might know that were there. They also had their own agenda of some musicians who were great. Frank Butler was an amazing drummer. George Morrow, an amazing bass player. And Teddy Edwards, I worked with him. And Dexter Gordon would be the Christmas guest at the job that we played at the Zebra Lounge.
Can you talk about what Charles and Bobby were doing different from the traditional blues scales? How they, in your mind, you walked...
I didn't. I'm sorry. I never went to school, so I didn't even think of anything about a scale or anything else. I just knew how to play. The way I learned how to play was when I was 11, I transcribed every note off of about 10 piano solos of Frankie Carl's. So then I learned everything from that, all the chords, everything.
But when you get on the bandstand with some cats, it's a different deal than just memory.
Well, it wasn't. not for me, because I could hear.
So you had big ears.
Hmm.
Mm-hmm. But
I mean, they let me when I was still in Ventura. They had music classes, so I just talked them in. Across from the music class, they had a room with a big grand piano in it, and I just talked them in. I said, "Well, look, let me go to the room every day, and then whenever you have a test, I'll come in and take the test." And they did. They agreed.
Right.
So it was that type of situation.
I mean, I know that this is an interesting question, especially for younger cats. I mean, how have you learned over time to balance your ego, to control your ego? I think it's a very big challenge for all the cats, musicians. I mean, you're talking about the idea of saying, listen, call me when there's a test, but it could come across to some people as elitist. So I'm curious as to how you dealt with. Can you talk about a humbling experience in your musical career, and really how it made you stronger?
Well, everything I did made me stronger, whether it was in a group or, like doing something myself.
Right.
I never thought that way. I'm sorry.
Well, you can definitively say that you've never been humbled in your career.
Well, I don't know what I think that. How can you play if? That's a really hard question to answer. That sounds like a question that's out of a vocabulary from another planet that doesn't belong in the world that I live in jazz. I don't know how to answer it.
Every single cat that I've talked to, I've talked to a lot of cats that you've collaborated with, they all know what I'm talking about. So my show is extraterrestrial as well. So it's like the idea that like this is my show, and my show is focused on those types of things of overcoming adversity, leadership, and love. So I understand that you did these transcriptions and learned everything from that. But
Mm-hmm. But I didn't try. I just did it because it was really attracting to me. And that's the only thing I was really attracted to. Haven't you ever seen kids like that? That's just, they love to do something. That was me.
Right. Well, I have two young daughters. I'm 38 years old, and so I'm there. When was the first time? I mean, I have to believe that you must have. When did you first cross paths with Stan Getz? He was on the West Coast in the 50s when you were starting.
Well, I heard one record of his about the same time that I heard Those Women, and I remember this one tune. I think it was a lot of different people on it, but he played this tune called "'Tis Autumn." And I just remember, I just loved the sound. And that was it. I never saw Stan. Of course, I knew his name. And I was working with Joe Henderson. We were touring the Midwest. And I don't know how Stan did this because it was like 1972. No cell phones, no computers. He would call me up in my hotel room and tell me rehearsal was the next day. And I would laugh, and I'd say, Stan, I'm working. I'm in Chicago or I'm in L.A. I won't be there. Okay, he must have done this 5 or 6 times within 2 weeks. And finally, Joe Henderson, in the middle of our tour, part of his tour got canceled. And so that was toward the end of the tour. So Stan called again asking the same question. And I said, well, I'll be there. So I never saw him. I never heard him in person. I didn't know what he looked like more than from a picture. But the band that I had gotten together and had played a lot with was Billy Hart and Clint Houston. They were in my trio, and they're recorded on Choice Records.
It's a burning album.
Yes,
absolutely.
And so they were the rhythm section in Stan's band. So I didn't even know if I wanted to work with Stan, but when I heard that, Billy Hart and Clint was the rhythm section, I thought this is really going to be fun, and it was.
So
maybe I didn't have time to think of all those things because I had 4 children. I mean, I had time to think of what I was doing. Period.
Right. I mean, I think it's listen. You're obviously, I mean, the cats that you played with, people like Joe Henderson. This is we're talking about geniuses here. Charles Lloyd, yourself included. But a lot of the world is suffering, and jazz has gone from a street music and basically a black subculture music to an elitist music. And I think it's important to talk to cats that are willing to lower themselves down and talk about sort of overcoming adversity. I mean, we're talking about a guy like Stan Getz. This was a Jekyll and Hyde character. So my question for you is, once you got to know him, okay, please describe for me how he treated you personally.
Well, it was really fun because both of us were extremely psychic. So I always knew what was going to happen, and I just had fun with it.
Explain what you mean by Stan was psychic.
Well, I don't want to use this name, but there was a piano player that had been in his band before, and for some reason, I don't know whether he thought I was friends with that piano player or what his thing was, but every time he thought the band wasn't quite doing what he might want it to do, he would mention this person's name, and he would know the placement of his body and how the sound, would travel. He would know what I had to have heard and not. So every time he mentioned that person's name, and I had no reason. I mean, the guy was a friend of mine, but I not, particularly. But whenever he would do that, Billy Hart had already told me that Stan hates hats. So every time he would mention that person's name, I would wear a hat that night. A big hat.
Yeah, possibly Richie Byrack, maybe. The thing is that, because Byrack, I talked to him a couple weeks ago, and he said that Stan, he went in to ask for a raise one time, and before he could even get the words out of his mouth, Stan said no. Stan knew what was in his mind.
Uh-huh.
I mean,
I'll tell you the other thing that happened, because Stan, one time we were in South America, and we're walking to the concert hall. And, of course, everybody's pretty much tired all the time because we're working every night and traveling a lot. Anyway, he handed me his saxophone. So I took the saxophone, and the next person walking along the street, I handed it to them. I mean, that's just, we had this relationship like, it would be funny. It wasn't like nobody was ever mad, but it was just like this thing. And then one time, I don't know what he did. He did something. Anyway, he thought that I might not like something he did. So I didn't know this. And we're in this dressing room, and it's filled with lockers. There's maybe 200 lockers that go from the floor to the ceiling. That was our band room. And unbeknownst to me, he had bought a huge bouquet of flowers for me because evidently he thought I don't know, maybe he had said Richie's name and I wore the hat. Okay. So
this is great.
I started dancing around the room. I didn't know anything. I came in and I felt good, and he was there, and it was before the show. And I just started dancing around the room, and then I went to a locker and opened it up. And you know what was inside.
I do, the bouquet.
So I don't know. That's how I learned the piano. I'm telling you, my whole life is like that. Things just come and they're there.
Well, if
you asked me to do that, I could never do that. But things always happen like that to me.
How have you been able to, what's the right way to say it? I mean, can you talk about this psychic experience as it relates to the bandstand? Knowing where somebody, specifically with Stan, knowing where he was going to go, or where Stan, if he didn't, being like yourself from that old school improvisational era where, if he didn't hear it, he wasn't just going to blow. He was going to let the rhythm section sort of maybe create their own themes. Can you talk about that psychic relationship on the bandstand?
Well, the problem is that I never thought about it. I mean, it just would happen, or it just didn't happen. It isn't something that I tried to make happen, and it isn't anything I studied. I just was like an observer. It's still that way. I mean, my life still tends in that direction.
Sure. No, and that's a beautiful thing. I'm trying to figure out how you, because you don't think about it, how do you communicate it to cats that are growing up in a world of music now where the music is created within academia? Joanne, there are no venues anymore in most major cities. Jazz is more popular in Europe than it is in the United States. So how do you express this kind of psychic energy to cats that are learning in a very formulaic time? I mean, how do you do that?
Well, I teach at Berkeley, and there's 2 students. I mean, they could learn so fast. That's the way that I teach. It's the way that I am, probably the way I'm talking to you. But I had this class in the summer of 7 women and 1 guy, no Americans. 1 was Japanese, 6 were Korean, and 1 was 5 were Korean, 1 was Spanish, and 1 was Chinese. And it happens every time they take this class with me. Anyone takes the class with me. Within a week or 2, they could see what it's like. And if they don't like it, they just drop out. And then the remaining people learn approximately 2 years worth of music in this 3 months. And these girls were really, this summer was totally amazing. So we got a lot of little amazing people around in their early 20s.
I understand. I understand that.
They have to do certain things that the college demands, so I let them do that. And whatever time they have left, I ask them what they want, and I just teach it to them.
Sure, and I know that's
why. Found out the things that they want. When I only learn what I want, so that's what I teach to them, is what they say what they want. If they need something that they don't know about, I include that too.
Could you give a specific example?
It's pretty hard.
I know, but that's the Jake Feinberg Show, is about answering hard questions. This is not a fluff show.
Well, I mean, it's hard because there's no answer to it. When they come in, I could just see them, and they get used to seeing me the same way. A lot of times if they come in, they were just practicing on a certain tune. When they come in, I'll just sit down at the piano and start playing that tune. So, what is that?
Well, that was an Apple iPhone ringing there, right?
Yeah, that was
right.
That was Chantal calling. I don't know what for. But.
So I mean, but I mean, they see you. What do you mean what does that mean? They see you.
They get used to how I am, and then it's a really comfortable way for them to feel, and then they're that way.
Can you talk about?
I can't. I could tell you something that maybe could explain it. Like, they gave me sabbatical in the fall.
Sure.
And so I decided I wanted to compose about 8 songs. So I thought, I know they're going to want me to write down how I did it and what I'm going to, all these things about the music. And so I started writing the music, and I discovered immediately that if I had any thought in my mind whatsoever, I could not compose.
I see.
The minute I would start to get an idea, I had to just go for that. And by the time I had it down, there was no way to describe how, why, what. anything like that. So I had to just cancel that part of the sabbatical out. Now, it ended up that instead of 8 songs, I have 20, and part of my thing is to play for them the songs that I wrote, so I'm trying to learn them now, which is no easy task, just solo piano. But there was no way, because the way that I learned, the way that whatever this thing is, the minute that your thought comes in, it totally destroys the ability of whatever is coming in to come in. Now, maybe scientists know what that is, probably a simple thing, but I don't bother with it because I can't do it.
Talking to Joanne Brackeen here on the Jake Feinberg Show, absolutely a mind blower. We're only 28 minutes in. I mean, how do you, I mean, in a world where we are so verbose, people are overthinking, I mean, how do you communicate with regular cats? I mean, with cats like Henderson and Getz, it's like,
oh, Joe Anderson was just like me, and so was Stan.
I know. Well, okay, so explain. Can you for this film documentary? I really want. This is so important because you're right, Stan. I mean, I've been carving out all this knowledge, but I need you to tell me the similarities between you and Stan. This has been one of the most interesting conversations I've ever had on the radio. If you could really talk about the similar psychosocial nature that you guys had. I mean, you just broke it down. You said, if I think, everything is destroyed. So please just riff on Stan and how you guys were similar from a personal point of view.
Well, I don't know how to answer that, but one thing I did notice about Stan is like the way that he spoke was the same way that he played. You know, he'd play a solo. He wouldn't play anything but what he wanted to hear. And when he spoke, his sentences would be just like somebody had written the script and rehearsed them 50 times and took out all the extra words and things. He would just speak them, and it was just like when he played.
It was a stream of consciousness and there was no editing. I mean, it was like...
No, that's just the way that he was.
Right.
I thought that was very interesting, I thought.
And
Monica wasn't very far removed from that wife that...
Yes. Well, I mean, I know she... Can you explain how similar she
was?
was?
Well, she was... she had a way where she could easily relate in that way, but she would know what she was doing and do it on purpose. Stan was always like that.
Can you
I never saw him when he wasn't exactly like that.
So there was a premeditated thing with Monica. Can you talk?
Yes.
Can you talk about an example?
Well, she was like most people, but she had an elegance to her that I think that's an elegance that's the best way I could describe it, the way that he talked and the way he played. And she had an elegance about her, too. But she also had some other stuff that a lot of people have.
What is other stuff that people have?
Well, thinking and planning and trying to do things for a certain effect and talking in such a way that you'll try to affect somebody in a certain way.
Could you give an example of what she did?
No, because I don't do that, but I certainly see it every day.
I mean, that's what I'm saying. I'm not saying it's you. I'm saying you observed what she did. Can you give an example of this thinking that she did?
Not really. No.
Can you talk about how Stan, given a specific example of how Stan showed love to you?
Well, one time he took the band, when he got in a really, really heavenly mood, which he did sometimes, he'd take the whole band out to dinner, take the whole band out to see a Michael Douglas movie. It was really, just he would be that way sometimes. But as you know, Jimmy Rolls has this picture, a drawing, that I used to see in Bradley's and a club in New York.
Sure.
And it's underneath it says, it's got a guy who's got about 20 different heads, and underneath it says a nice bunch of guys.
Right. Well, but the
Yeah.
original, the original line was that he was a bunch of nice guys, and then it got flipped around to he was a nice bunch of guys.
Yeah.
So, I mean, do you know why people that was such a common phrase to refer to Stan? Can you?
Because he was like that.
Like
But
what?
I didn't like that. You'd be one way happy, another time different moods.
How hard? Yeah. So I mean, but would he take it out on you?
Well, he wouldn't take anything out on me. You know how I was.
I'm saying no, but I know. You know what I
You
did?
had to think of what might happen on the bandstand the next day.
Well, this is compelling.
No,
because
but you could. Billy Hart's a good one to talk with.
I already did.
about
I already did. I talked to 40
Yeah.
people so far, Joanne. It's important for you to give some specifics because I know that people like Dizzy and people like that wouldn't take Stan's shit. All right, and they'd push back on him. So if you could actually talk about how
No, I didn't do anything. It's just like I know that. I just remember the one time that it almost happened. We were in New Orleans, I think, playing at this club, and I can't remember the specifics, but he did something that was not balanced. I don't know if it was about somebody in the band. It wasn't about Billy or me, I know that. But he did something, and we were about ready to play Lush Life. So on Lush Life, we did like this intro behind him, and then he played it. And so on the intro, I just started playing things that would sound really good with the sound of the chord, but it also sounded like on the verge of being Cecil Taylor. And he immediately stopped what he had started. So it then
Well, no,
went ahead and just played the regular stuff behind him.
Okay, so let's go back.
But I didn't.
Hold on. You said No, I don't know. So you're trying to say that you were offended by his behavior, and therefore you were going to.
No, I don't feel offended is the wrong word. It just feels like something's not balanced.
Sure.
If you're a juggler and something goes up in the air and you're not going to catch it, you change your movement there. And so it just felt like that. So it felt like the only way to balance it out was playing this stuff behind him that would sound good, but he would recognize immediately that something needed to go back in balance. And that's what happened.
I dig. That is heady stuff. You're telling me that only happened.
Well, I didn't think about it. It just happened.
Sure.
Afterwards, I could think about it like now.
Right, but you felt, you didn't think, but you felt that it was out of balance at that time. Is that right?
I knew it was. Yeah, I knew it was.
Did you feel like Stan was a cat that it was hard to? I mean, did you really communicate with him verbally a lot, or was it mainly through?
Well, no, he never talked that much. He let us do what we wanted in the band. The only thing he ever told us is, don't take more choruses than I take, and preferably one chorus less. That's the only thing he ever said to me. I didn't hear him. I don't know what he said to other people.
Right.
I know one time he didn't like the bass player. He went over and unplugged the amp. That would be something that I would do if I.
Believe me, I can't
really
wait to hang with you. I mean, you are relentless. We got a game.
Well, I did do this. There was one time in Los Angeles. It was my trio. I forget who I think it was Clint Houston. Once again, I don't like to name the people because I don't think that they would appreciate that or their friends would. But it was a drummer, well known in the L.A. area, and he came in the first night. He played great. It was wonderful. And then he brought his girlfriend in for the weekend. And he got up, and it was supposed to be his time to take a drum solo. And he got up on the microphone and started talking. And when I heard the sound of a human voice in what this musical maze of beauty that we were playing, it came in. I just very evenly got off the bandstand and went to the bartender and said, "Would you please take the drums off the bandstand?"
Wow.
That was that.
But he still had the microphone to talk, right? He was still talking.
No, he pretty much stopped. He pretty much stopped, and I had him just, I just went back and continued playing with the bass.
We have a game on this program called Name That Tune. Joanne, I want you to just settle in and don't think, but just listen and feel, and then...
I don't know names of tunes.
Well, we'll come back. We'll just enjoy this, and we'll come back and break it down. The Circle Tree Ranch, Abbott Taylor Jewelers, the Jewish Federation of Southern Arizona, the Jewish Community Center of Southern Arizona, Craig Pretzinger Agency of Allstate Insurance, and the Stereo Hospital, and we thank them for their support. All right, Mrs. Brackeen, what do you got for us?
What am I supposed to have?
I'd like you to try to identify that tune.
Oh, I don't know what the tune is.
Do you know who was playing piano?
No.
That was
But
Joanne.
I know how they studied, and I did wonder at one point they had a lot of harmonic things that they did that could have opened up some things that they would have played in the right hand, but they didn't. They had already learned these things in the right hand. I would say the person probably likes Tommy Flanagan. They probably like Chick Corea. I heard some things from there, but it sounded like the right hand had learned things before the left hand. So then, but the chords were a little bit more modern than some of the concepts that usually go with those chords in the right hand.
You are a trip. I mean, that's you.
Oh, okay.
1977 Montmartre, Volume 1.
Okay. We had to play that way.
What do you mean? What do you mean? That was Lady Sings the Blues, that version of that tune. What do you mean?
Yeah, but it must have been with Stan.
That's right. You were with Stan?
Yeah, because I wouldn't have played that tune. Yeah.
Can you explain
So
what
there you have it. There was somewhat of confinement on a ballad, but there wasn't on other tunes. What we did in that band was what I did was record every night, and then the band would, at least Billy and sometimes Clint, would get together and listen to the whole thing. So we could figure out what we could do the next night that would work. In other words, how much music could we play and still make Stan sound the way he wanted to sound, but still play what we might want to play?
I dig. So you still wanted to make sure your own individual voice got out there.
Well, as much as we could, but still, it's his band. So that's the way we looked at it.
If one of your Korean students or Chinese or Spanish or Jake Feinberg walked into your classroom at Berkeley and said, I'm learning about this horn player Stan Getz. Can you talk looking back without thinking too hard? Why is Stan Getz still relevant to the lexicon of music today?
Just the way, I think, the sound and the way he played, like I just mentioned to you before, how he talked like a, if you were, who's one of the incredible movie stars that, in other words, he had an elegance and a talent. It was like a genius. So you actually, if you played with him, you had to play with him as though he was a singer.
I'm not a musician. Can you explain how you do that?
Well, you listen to every single thing that he does, and the things that you play chord-wise behind him every note has to agree with what his sound is and what he's going to play, and not just the sound but the feeling.
It's fascinating. Do you feel like you were you kind of raised yourself musically that way? I mean, Stan was not. He didn't. I mean, he was on the road with.
No, I never did that before or after. I mean, with that band was that band. But when you learn how to do that, it definitely, it's a good thing to learn.
What was the? You went on. Had you already been a leader before you joined Stan's group?
Well, like I said, I had a little trio. I mean, we weren't working that much. I worked a lot in duets with Clint Houston, who was probably the bassist. I don't know if he did the Montreux there.
Montmartre, in France. Yes.
Montmartre.
That was Billy, Clint. Rest in peace.
Yeah, that was Clint. Yeah.
And you
okay, so Clint and I had worked a lot together. Billy was on some of my record dates before. No, that wasn't before Stan.
It was right around this time. Those records on Choice are burning hot.
Mm-hmm. But
burning.
I think it was 1975. The one mine.
Well, my question about is that what did you take away from a leadership point of view, or what did you learn most from being with Stan?
Just a lot of music. I mean, there was no room for not being right there at every instant when you were playing.
Say that again?
Well, there was no room for you not being right there in the instant by instant, being right there. Not physically, your awareness when you were playing on the bandstand.
God, that is fascinating stuff. No, you're really blowing my mind right now. What were you?
I mean,
yeah.
He didn't really, he really didn't need us as a band to back him up, but he chose to just go ahead and move with what was going on in the music world. So, he picked that band.
Did he choose a lot of your originals to play on the bandstand?
No, but we could play them. He was like the singer. The band comes on first and plays, and then he comes on. So sometimes that tune that we played before he came on, or a tune or two, sometimes one of those would be an original.
So you guys would actually open as a trio for him sometimes?
Yes, almost every night.
Wow. Interesting.
Yeah, he conducted it like a singer as well as, the way he played sounded like a singer.
Were you aware, I mean, Stan was he was in one of the most volatile personal relationships at that point with Monica in the 70s. She was administering antabuse in his food. I know, I've talked to quite a few cats, people that were aware of that. Stan was not aware of it. But he was also out of control, binging on drugs and alcohol. I mean, was this a side that you were aware of?
Of course. But everybody was doing that then.
Everybody?
Well, it was very prevalent.
How did you navigate that culture? Basically, again, this is when the late 70s, but I mean, Stan did come up in an era when, if you weren't on junk, then you weren't trusted. I mean, can you talk about this culture, if that's an accurate assessment, and how you navigated it yourself?
Well, I never had any problem with it. I would just drink tea. But if I felt like I would drink, well, I remember one time we were in Russia. When you get tired enough and nights, night after night, just no sleep and everything, some guy came up and offered us some Russian vodka, and Stan was there and saw it. So we took it back on the bandstand. I had a great big glass of it. I don't remember. I think Billy had some too, and for sure Clint. Anyway, I just for fun. I mean, it was fun to have fun. So I took the glass and I just, in the first set, just drank the whole thing.
Right.
And then Stan he couldn't believe that someone could just drink that and just keep playing the same way. And I thought that was funny.
Yeah.
Because I didn't really play different if I were to drink it, but I didn't drink that. You know, I prefer tea.
Of course, tea is wonderful. But did you? I guess Jane Getz, the pianist, had a stint with Stan, and she said that he could get up completely lit out of his mind and play just like you described, whether it was drugs or alcohol, played no differently.
Well, that's what we did if we were going to do that.
Were you guys soulmates in some ways? Do you
No.
feel? No, I mean,
no, I never. No.
I don't mean it like.
I mean, on the bandstand, maybe.
Mm-hmm.
I do remember. I just came from Joe Henderson, which is much more of what I play. I'd been in that band from '72 to '75. So.
When you say what you play, what is it like? Can you talk about what you play? What you mean by that?
Well, just really creative, just going for it.
You don't believe that Stan was doing that with?
Well, he was doing that in his own way, and I think he wanted his rhythm section like that. Otherwise, he wouldn't have kept us there for as long as he did.
Do you feel that? Can you talk about why you believe Stan kept calling you at that beginning?
Oh, I have no idea. I didn't even know him. I just thought it was funny that this guy would call 5 or 6 times. Number two, how would he know where I was and what hotel I was in? I mean, in the 70s. Nowadays, you can know anything.
Well, you know, I mean, this is fascinating.
I have no idea.
You never. One day he called up and said, "This is Stan Getz," and just wanted to. He was pursue. Do you feel like he was not in a necessarily any kind of like detrimental way, but he was a possessive figure? I mean, he wouldn't stop calling you. It just happened that the tour got canceled with Joe, but he was going to keep after you until he got you.
I have no idea. I didn't remember. I'm a wife and I have 4 children, and I'm on the road with Joe Henderson. I don't have time to think about motives of people. It's enough just to take care of what I had to take care of there.
Tell me a little bit, Joanne, about what continues to motivate and drive you today, just on a humanistic level.
Something that just happened is really, really interesting, I think. I wrote this tune in 1980, and it's called Egyptian Dune Dance. I'm trying to remember what I think I recorded on this Japanese label. I can't remember the name of the record company. Kohei. The guy's name that was on the label, his name started with 2 Ks. He was from Japan. And it was Jack DeJohnette and Eddie Gomez are on the album. And the tune is called Egyptian Dune Dance. And it's like dum da da dum dum da da dum dum da 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 da. That's 1 5.5 beat measure, and then has another dum ba da da do dum dum da 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 dum ba da, and that's the second one. So this whole tune is built in polyrhythms on top of 5.5 beat ostinato, 2 of them. So I played that. We played it. Well, we recorded it, and also used to play it in my quartet. So I never heard anybody play that way, and no one really felt comfortable playing it in the band. So I stopped playing it. Okay, so let's see, Monday and Tuesday I was testing students. So it turns out 2 of the teachers at Berkeley had something like that. One of them had given a student invitation, and they had this little, it sounded kind of like a 3/4 idea ostinato under it, so it would keep being placed at different points in the melody. And I think the other one had something even more complicated, maybe 7 or whatever. She was playing a blues. I think it might have been Billy's Bounce, and she had this other rhythm. And I thought, well, at last they got around. I could go ahead. It's 36 years later, but now I'll go bring out my tune, and now I could write some more. Maybe somebody will be able to play it. I could give it to my students, and I can have a band there. This is going to happen. I could do what I had started that long ago because it's really fun.
So can you
tell? There's a lot going on now, and there's so many things that's fathomless.
That's great. I mean, can you tell me what you thought of this interview?
What I thought of this one?
Of this interview?
We're just talking, I think. We're passing ideas one to the other.
Was it an enjoyable experience for you?
Oh, it's very enjoyable.
Oh, that's wonderful. No,
I'm interested in people that are interested in, the musician's thoughts and ideas on a nice level. So.
Right. Well, I'm always trying to. Can you just talk about your concept of in the last couple minutes here? There's only two letters that separate music and magic, and I just kind of wanted you to talk about leaving your physical body on the bandstand.
Well, it doesn't feel like you leave your body. You just go into another place. Your body's still there.
What place is that?
I don't know. It's a very comfortable place that I very often exist in.
What does it feel like? What does it feel like in that
well, it feels like you're open to taking in ideas and putting them out on the instrument that you're playing.
Joanne Brackeen, I hope we can do part two. I mean, this to me, this has been an exercise in just mental creativity. I really admire your process, and I kind of wish that more cats had that mindset going in.
Well, I never talk about it unless I'm asked because a lot of people get upset.
I don't know. Truthfully, I am very impressed that you have. Well, there's enough people out there that can hang with you, and ultimately you can get all your stuff out of your system on the bandstand. But I just would like for part two. I'd like to focus on just how you've been able to navigate with your point of view in this bottom line society that we live in now. It's just it's important for future generations. So I really thank you for taking the time today, my friend.
Well, thank you. I've enjoyed it thoroughly.
Oh, wonderful. I'll make sure that Chantal gets a copy of this, and we'll talk really soon, okay?
That'd be great.
Thank you, Joanne. Have a beautiful day.
You're welcome.
All right, bye-bye.
Bye.
Mr. Roper, you just, in 20 seconds, you want to tell me what you thought of that interview?
Just mind-blowing. I think you said it a couple times. I mean, just, you can tell that she is an instructor, a teacher, in that the way she describes music is almost logical. But there's a creative juices that are lying underneath that are waiting to be sparked. And the way she described the music, her connection with Stan on the bandstand, just really beautiful stuff. Really, really keen to what music is. I think
also like it's. I'm going to sign off, but sometimes you really have to joust with people. Might feel like pulling teeth, but at the end, those kinds of cats love that stuff. So. Thank you, Mike Roper. We'll be back next week with a couple of merry pranksters, Ken Babbs and George Walker. It's going to be a trip. Until then, this is the Jake Feinberg Show on Power Talk. We'll see you next week. Peace.
I've been around the world a few times, but I don't understand. I just like to play the blues. It's not all the money that I want. I just like to play the blues. And I like for everybody to get together and all of us play the blues. Let's have a good time. Because blues is where it's at. I'm telling you, I love it. I can't help but play it. So when you wake up in the morning,
You're on a gig.
and ain't got no money, or no gig, whatever you call it, you ain't got nothing but the blues. your old lady going to do yagging you and arguing with you. Tell you, why don't you get up and do something? Now go to the steel mill